Great. Okay, so um, great. So time for the last session of today. How's the conference so far?
Amazing. I think is everyone. I'm gonna make this as entertaining as I possibly can for you guys, because I think that everyone is probably just getting to the end of the day, a bit tired. But this is a little bit of light relief. I've had a fantastic time. My third time in Israel, my third time in Tel Aviv. It's been fantastic to see what's going to be going on. It's been really, really good. Really, really good.
So John, tell us about your role at ASOS.
Yeah, so if you don't know, guys, I'm John Mooney. I'm the brand creative director at ASOS. I've been with ASOS for 9 years. I started in the business to establish and set up the menswear retail design team to actually kind of do product development. About 3 and a bit years ago, I moved over to look after the studio team as well, so the in-house facility that we have in the building where we kind of photograph all of our e-com assets, so all of the model shots, the still life imagery, the videography, copywriting, QC check, retouching, etc. That's 14 in-house studios. It's still studios. It's a big facility, about 250 people. And then in January 2017, I took over all brand. So I'm now responsible pretty much for any creative aspect of ASOS that you see, whether it be the e-com assets, an event, or a campaign as well. Everything in that kind of social ecosystem as well.
What are the key trends that you see today in the retail industry?
I kind of came today hoping that what I was going to say wasn't one of the buzzwords, and I was probably going to mention and reference kind of personalization, but I'm not going to mention personalization. Because I'm honest, even internally within ASOS, personalization became a big thing, and I think that everyone felt that they were in a race to be the first brand to be able to personalize in a truly customer kind of focused kind of way. And more recently, the kind of personalization has become just a set of principles that kind of everyone has to try and adapt to. And more than anything else that we've been talking about at ASOS in the last kind of maybe 6 to 9 months is just relevancy. You know, there's the whole conversation about kind of, certainly in the UK, you know, the UK high street, how the UK high street is performing, certain kind of high street retailers that have kind of lost their kind of traction with their kind of customer, and have obviously kind of gone into liquidation and they've been kind of bought out. One of the big questions you could ask there is whether or not it's actually because they've become less relevant to their kind of customers. And I think that for us, it's about kind of staying relevant all the time, as often as possibly can. You know, our vision at ASOS is to make sure that we kind of target any customer in the age bracket from 20 to 29. So we don't really want to deal with 19-year-olds, and we don't want to deal with 30-year-olds, even though we know that they are in our kind of customer base. So you pick that sweet spot of the age of 25. It's going to pitch all of our kind of creative to create a representation of our brand. What we know is that, I mean, I've been at ASOS for 9 years, and actually the 25-year-olds 9 years ago are now much older and potentially not in the demographic we need to appeal to. So I think that being relevant to the kind of customer base as it keeps on kind of refreshing itself, you know, it was about kind of millennials, and actually now it's about kind of Gen Z kind of coming through in the ranks, that actually you have to stay relevant. But, you know, relevancy is kind of is far beyond just looking at the generation you're tackling. It's also about the product that you sell, how you sell them, relevant price points, relevant in the market because of the competition that also exists around you, relevant at kind of territory level, because actually there are kind of different things. You know, there's obviously the conversation in Israel about kind of hitting that 70 to 75 kind of dollar kind of threshold is a wholly relevant conversation to have in Israel to see whether or not we should actually kind of be changing our position and to make sure that works better for customers. Are we not listening to customers? And I think that kind of relevancy is a super important thing. Alongside relevancy, which is generally kind of driving innovation, I think for me it's not necessarily a principle, but it's not normalization. There is a lot of technology that becomes normalized very, very quickly. And I think that we need to kind of not lose sight of the fact that some of the stuff that we talked about kind of today, they've been talking about the last kind of few years. For some customers, they just expect it. Yeah, it's almost like it isn't an element that delights them. It could be one of the things where they go through checkout, and just because checkout has a new payment term in there, they could be a new customer. They never realized the fact that we didn't have it before. So very quickly, it's a big initiative for a business, but it's kind of very, very quickly normalized for kind of the customer. So that's why, you know, me being kind of quite different, probably as a visitor and speaker today, living in that kind of creative space, it's very much about adding customer delight to what we do, to actually try and kind of add innovation over the top as a layer to make sure that it is actually adding a bit of kind of just glitz and glam and kind of specialism over the top that actually customers can get lost in, if I'm honest. And in many circumstances, what I always say is doing what other retailers can't do, to try and kind of push the boundaries that little bit more.
How do you guys at ASUS implement innovation? You've had a lot of projects in the past year, we know.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about the process.
I mean, I think that with any vendor, any kind of business, they probably always got their kind of priority stack of tests and trials and A/B tests that they kind of want to do. And I think that, I'll be kind of quite candid and honest. For me, it's actually sometimes a frustration because for anyone working in your area of the business, you want your priority to be the priority. So obviously with an ASOS, it has to go through that kind of priority stack. You have to fight your kind of corner to make sure that kind of you're pushing the boundaries. I think the one thing that's kind of happened, and it's definitely going to change in ASOS, over the last kind of year or so, is where the businesses stopped working in the silos of kind of technology and kind of creative, and we're definitely starting to work a hell of a lot kind of better together. If I'm honest, purely based on kind of the time that we've kind of spent together with Retech over the last kind of 2 years, to make sure that there's an understanding here of at customer-facing level, the technology at kind of times has to have a very brand-centric creative layer put over the top, and actually one can't work without the other. I think that's really important for kind of our kind of customers. You know, we see the presentation we've seen today, whether it be about augmented reality and mixed reality, new ways of kind of doing creative. For me, it's all about the fact that your brand still has to kind of stand out. It has to be the right kind of version of your brand. So that's why it's going to be really important that kind of technologists who maybe don't always kind of see things in a creative way have me and my team sitting there to help kind of balance things out and kind of think a little bit more kind of customer centric when we're doing stuff. Yeah.
Why do you think it's important for retailers to work with startups?
I think a lot of kind of speakers have mentioned it today, but internally you just haven't got the infrastructure to be able to kind of have all the ideas. It's impossible. It's impossible to actually know about something that you didn't even know existed. And I think that's why it's important to kind of to come to these kind of sessions or do the delegations that we do throughout the year to see new brands with new ideas, ideas you never thought of, to see how you can maybe twist and use and mold that idea or purely just implement it because it actually adds gravitas to your platform, your app, the ecosystem that you exist in. Because you can't do it on your own. Some stuff just takes too long to implement yourself. And as I've said a few times today, ASOS has kind of grown over the 9 years that I've been there, the 18 years of existence. And it is a massive ocean liner that is very hard to turn around in the water. And I think for us that we're very, very aware of the fact that there are new, young, startup retail brands, fashion brands that are like speedboats. And they can turn very, very quickly because they've got the agility. They haven't got the kind of the product catalog that's the size that we've kind of got. They haven't got kind of the risk that's maybe associated to kind of making change because again, it will have less of a detrimental effect on the infrastructure. So for us, it's about kind of like keeping nimble as much as you possibly kind of can. The innovation is kind of super important. It keeps us wholly relevant. So yeah.
And so you guys have been working with Israeli startups in the past 2 years or so. What do you think differentiates the Israeli startups from their peers in Europe or in the UK?
I think I'm allowed to say this. It's probably the feistiness of the Israeli market. Yeah, I think it's one of the things where I can't remember the word. What's the word? That's the word. That word that you said. I think it's wholly relevant. It's a wholly relevant conversation to have because, I've just discussed with some of the guys outside before. You can do these events in the UK, and UK, British kind of general kind of temperament, personality and attitude is, let's all be a bit polite and let's not go and kind of have a conversation and let's not kind of go and kind of speak to that person. Whereas actually here today, the amount of people have actually just been very direct, which is absolutely fine. And I don't mind a direct conversation to just come in and ask the question, build a relationship. You need that kind of honesty, and you actually, also as startups, you need to have them balls, if I'm honest, to be able to kind of go and do that because there's someone else kind of who's going to have that kind of conversation if you don't have it. So it's really important. We've got some relationships with some startups in the UK, but one thing I'd say is that what we're kind of seeing from you guys that you're organising for us in Israel and Tel Aviv is that you don't get the broad spectrum of kind of startups dealing with different types of technologies for different parts of the business. As we've come here today is, may interest the kind of the audience, but we're coming here today because we would like to kind of to separate a creative stream of innovation because it isn't just about payment terms at ASOS. It isn't just about kind of logistical kind of changes. But there's a whole bit here that's about the augmented reality, the virtual reality. But we actually want to have almost like a bit of a pledge to actually be able to bring this stuff to life to really kind of do it in a really kind of good way, as opposed to maybe doing it in what is like the Hollywood blockbuster film version way of doing it. You know, this isn't Minority Report, this isn't Star Trek. We live in a real world with real buildings, we exist as real human beings, and actually we want to kind of bring something to life that actually will actually help customers make a decision that is actually kind of fun, that isn't just a kind of gimmick. And we need help to be able to do it. We've got loads of ideas, but sometimes we just actually, technologically can't kind of bring it to life, so we need help and support to do that.
What can you tell us about the work that you guys have been doing with startups in the past year?
So we've been doing kind of quite a lot of work. I think that kind of probably one of the most interesting ones that we're about to kind of go into a new phase of development on is with Zeekit. Do any of you know kind of Zeekit, the business? So what was interesting again from my introduction to URL and Anala was that I didn't have a perspective of kind of coming to see startups where potentially we could actually take what was fundamentally the idea, but can actually kind of twist it and shape it and change it to actually make it work for us as a business. So I got invited out by the ASOS CIO to come and see some kind of technology kind of brands in Israel. And obviously, being a creative, I had a very, very different perspective on what this trip was going to offer. So when Yael from kind of Zeekit came in and did their presentation, rather than it be a way to augment clothes on my body as a kind of customer at home, I saw it as an opportunity to say, well, in our studios, in our office in GLH, we've got 14 studios with 2 models per studio every single day. We're shooting up to 5,000 products every single kind of week, which are going live every single week. But still, from a customer perspective, we only give one product represented on one model at any one time, because actually that's the limitations. And actually, I'll be kind of quite open with you that, our model budget for them e-com shots is getting close to like £9 million a year. That's how much we spend purely just on their models. We obviously got to actively manage the cost of the product, so how much it costs us to shoot the assets and get the product live. And what I saw in kind of what Zeekit could do was actually something that actually wasn't necessarily a front-end element, that actually was kind of customer-facing, but was actually allowing us to help us in back office with regard to the idea of taking multiple shots of models and actually then kind of digitally mapping the product that was a model shot in studio with a product shot in studio. When you put them together, actually it looked invisible. You actually could not tell because the lighting all kind of matched perfectly. So we did a test on 200 women's dresses. We've done a test on 200 men's kind of t-shirts. I won't go into the detail because I don't want to, because it's secret. I'm joking. But it's been very successful. So it's been successful, and we want to take it to the next step. And it actually has now kind of turned into how that affects kind of customer interface. So we very secretly kind of put it out there, but now it's more a case of how do we bring it to life, how do we talk about it. I also love the fact that kind of Zeekit is translation is chameleon.
Yeah.
And a chameleon, if you did or did not know, also has a fundamental kind of backstory in ASOS with regards to a moment in time where there was a chameleon telephone that basically kind of kept ASOS in business through the Christmas period, and so there's something kind of quite nice about that as well.
I still remember the conversation we had over falafel right after you met with Yael when you came up with the idea, and we were in Allenby, and it was very funny because the guys from ASOS were in Israel for the first time, and I booked restaurants for them to go to have some Italian food and Vietnamese, and then they were like, no, but we want shawarma, we want falafel. So that was great.
There's definitely never enough time in kind of Tel Aviv to be able to experience Tel Aviv properly kind of thing, so we have to make more time for it, definitely.
Definitely, and I